Mr. Thring,
Good morning, Chair. Morning, colleagues.
Ms. Webster.
Present.
Those are all members with yourself currently on the platform, Chair. We correct, Chair. We can proceed with the meeting.
Thank you very much. If you can just share the agenda. Andre, please share the agenda.
Margot.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Can we get the mover and the seconder for the agenda?
I move, Chair.
Thank you very much. Dr. Gigaba moves. Seconder?
I second.
Thank you, Member Sophia. Second. Thank you very much, colleagues. Are there any apologies, Andre?
Chair, I only have an apology from Mr. Mdluli at this stage, Chair. Others may still join us, Chair. And I'll keep you posted if I receive any other apologies during the course of the meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andre. The purpose of the meeting today is for the committee to receive the briefing from NCT as well as TRP on their first, second, and third quarter financial and non-financial performance, given their available resources for 2025 financial year. Oversight of their performance is an extension of Section 5 of Money Bill Amendment Procedures and Related Matters Act 9 of 2009. This section of the Act requires that the National Assembly, through its committee, to annually assess the performance of each national department over an 18-month period and submit a report of this assessment known as the Budget Review and Recommendation Report. I will now welcome the delegation as led by Deputy Minister Kodlimpi to proceed with the presentation as per the agenda. Over to you, DM.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Good morning to all the members of the committee and the TTIC team. I will start with just giving highlights of the NCT work that they will be reporting on for quarters 1 to 3. And just to note, Honorable Chair, that the tribunal's work is quite central to government's broader developmental objectives, especially with respect to fostering inclusive growth and protecting vulnerable consumers, and broadly speaking, strengthening the capability and integrity of the state. And that relates in principle to the role that the NCT plays in promoting financial stability within credit markets. And that relates to things such as debt rearrangement applications, where consumers are indebted and they want to arrive at arrangements that allow them to repay their commitments, but without suppressing their financial capabilities to live a good and decent life overall. So that work is very important. Now, if we allow consumers to rehabilitate their indebtedness, we actually give them the ability to retain critical assets such as their homes and their vehicles, which are usually the first things that face repossession, but also ensuring that credit providers recover their funds within a structured legal framework. So you don't solve one side of the equation at the expense of the other. Moreover, successful debt rehabilitation allows consumers to also regain financial stability and to re-enter the formal credit market, enabling them to participate productively in the economy. One additional work that the tribunal contributes on this front is through their youth development initiatives on providing internship opportunities and mentoring programs, as well as SMME training interventions that support skills development and institutional capacity. Now, I'm framing this, Honorable Chairperson, to highlight how the work of the NCT fits into the wider strategic goal of the TTIC in recalibrating the South African economy And very central to that is to promote inclusivity in credit markets and ensuring that as broad a cross-section of South Africans as possible are given pathways to function and function as competitive citizens in our credit markets and financial markets broadly. The team is going to highlight their performance areas on the APP adopted for the period. They will, of course, note that they've achieved 100% of their targets. These are the experiences that they've had. One other point to raise about the NCT, Honorable Chair, is the ability to deploy technology and artificial intelligence to augment headcount challenges. So they have a limited human resource headcount, but they optimize their performance through the use of technology and especially artificial intelligence to respond to large volumes of applications from citizens. So it's one of the test cases that proves the importance of deploying technology to improve our capabilities in the state and providing a citizen-friendly state apparatus altogether. So, Honorable Chair, just on that front with the NCT, I will stop and then proceed to the takeover regulation panel so that I don't come back in between the presentations. The panel also is reporting for the same period under review from the 1st of April to the 31st of December. Key to note is that the one thing that might be of interest is the composition of the panel, but the presenter will indicate what that looks like and the work that it does. And the one outstanding thing which we've not completed with respect to the panel is the appointment of a full-time executive director. It is still now under an acting executive director, and that's because that function of appointment is performed by the Department of Trade and Industry with the concurrence of the National Treasury. But that process is in motion. We will be receiving the feedback from the National Treasury to proceed on that score. They will also explain the dynamic of their performance in that period, the variation between the initial 87.5% of the initial targets and then the adjusted targets, landing them at 100% performance, and what went into that will be explained as they do that. The takeover regulation panel, although it is pretty still new within the DTIC group, is one of the most critical regulatory bodies we have in dealing with the financial markets as well, not just the financial markets, the capital markets broadly, but especially the work of the JSE. It is one instrument that we have within our purview to interact with dynamics within the JSE, but they will explain what that looks like. Suffice to say, it performs a great deal of work that could also help us to have live sight as government of the transformations in the South African economy as reflected in the nature of mergers and acquisitions that are registering in the JSE. But of course, we can discuss that on a different day, what use that information is for us in understanding the directions of the South African economy. With those few words, Honorable Chair, I will hand over to the NCT team to start us off with their presentation. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Honourable Deputy Minister. My name is Trevor Bailey. I'm going to lead the NCT delegation this morning. Good morning also to the chairperson of the committee and to each and every member of the committee. The NCT is pleased to present its first, second and third quarter reports to the committee for the 2025-26 financial year. I lead a highly talented, energetic, and committed NCT leadership team. They are here today and they will participate in the presentation. They are Hazel Alwa Simpson, who is the Chief Operations Officer, Ahmed Muller, our Chief Financial Officer, Baxam Verti, our Chief Information Officer, and Prenison Woodley, our Registrar. We like to think of ourselves as sassy. That's being lively, bold, and full of spirit, albeit a little cheeky given our size and what we seek to achieve. We work with passion and purpose. We are, as the Honourable Deputy Minister said, at the cutting edge of technology. We're accessible anywhere at any time as we seek to improve the lives of all South Africans. So this is the beginning of our story, and I'll now turn to our Chief Operating Officer as we move to slide 3, Hazel Alwa, to begin the story.
Good morning, Honourable Deputy Minister, honourable members and colleagues. My name is Hazel Alwa Simpson and I will continue with the presentation. I want to touch on this slide where we talk about we work with passion and purpose. At the NCT, our staff are extremely important to us, and that is how we are able to deliver on the exceptional performance. We talk about being accessible 24/7 anywhere. Honourable members, we take your feedback very seriously and we action it accordingly. At the last session that we had with you, you did ask us about how accessible are you, and you wanted more information. We will be showing you the data that we have produced in terms of how we've become accessible throughout South Africa, throughout the different districts, and we will give you more information pertaining to that. Being accessible 24/7 is really through our ICT initiatives, which means that our debt counselors can access us anywhere in the world, anywhere in South Africa, and they can access us 24/7. This also means that our tribunal members, no matter where they are located, also can work 24/7 to adjudicate on cases. And that is depicted and displayed through our website, which shows you every 10 minutes cases that are coming in, how many cases are coming in, and how many cases we are finalizing. So we are proud to say that we are expeditious in terms of the legislation we are expected to deliver on. We improve and we touch the lives of South Africans, and through every order and every case that we finalize as the tribunal, it impacts the lives of the most vulnerable. Our staff also show that they, through their commitment, understand the importance of the roles that they play in the broader South African economy. Our key mandate is to adjudicate on cases that are related to the Consumer Protection Act and the National Credit Act. And our role has changed quite significantly in our strategic document. You will find that we have a very evolving role. I think we can move to the next slide. And that role is the role of a convener. What that means is the tribunal now liaises with different role players in the consumer and credit industry. We collate information, we use ICT to analyze that information and to help us inform policy and legislative changes, and to ensure that we are able to react to the industry changes. So that puts us in the position to be more proactive. And it also helps us, honourable members, to assist you in making more informed decisions about what is really happening in the economy. Are we being effective in terms of the legislation that we are delivering? Where are the gaps, and how can we ensure that we close the gaps to ensure better and effective legislative regulatory impact? The next slide talks about the case volumes, our capacity, and our funding. Honourable Godlimpi touched on this issue about how the tribunal over the years has ensured that it is able to deliver on its mandate with limited funding, with limited resources from a staff perspective as well as a tribunal member perspective. You will look at our cases. We started off as an organization when we were in 2009, 2010. You will see we had a caseload of 488 cases. If you look at 2024, 2025, we received 54,000 cases, 54,429 cases. That was not by accident. That was through a deliberate stakeholder strategy to ensure that we access our parties, consumers that need to come to us, debt counselors that file the bulk of our debt rearrangement agreements. It was a deliberate strategy to ensure that we go out there, we tell people about the services that we offer. We put together an ICT system that makes it easy, and it reduces the regulatory burden and makes it easy for parties to file their cases with the tribunal. And that deliberate strategy has seen an increase in cases. Now, while we are very proud of the cases that we have received because it ensures that we have a greater impact to ensure inclusive growth in the economy, it did mean that we had to find different strategies, different ICT interventions to deliver on our mandate, to deliver expeditiously. So you'll see our staff complement is a very small staff complement of only 54 people. That has not grown from in the last 1 to 5 years. If you then look at the grant, our grant has also decreased. So we had to ensure that with limited resources, our tribunal members also dropped from 18 members to 12 members, that we could still deliver. And we were able to do that through ICT. Our category of cases are really around debt review applications and non-debt review applications. The non-debt review applications are our bigger cases that we get from consumers, the regulators, credit providers, and other registrants. So that's just to give you the context in terms of the types of cases that we would receive from the different parties. Our statistics over the 3 quarters is that we received in the 3 quarters 35,612 cases that were filed with us, and the blue portion just shows you the 5,487 is an illustration of cases that we carry forward. We have then finalized in the 3 quarters 37,871 cases. The little brown blocks depict a balance of 3,228 cases. And that's on the DRAs, and then you will see the figures on the non-DRAs. This slide is important because what it illustrates is even though we are dealing with high volume of cases, those little brown blocks are not a backlog. What those blocks represent is these are the cases that we are carrying forward into a next quarter. However, those cases, for various reasons, are not ready to be adjudicated. And some of those reasons relate to that the matters are not ripe for hearing. Some of them are inactive. They still have to be set down. And there's cases where parties request a postponement, which is then considered and in most cases granted to the parties. And some of the matters are then waiting or pending appeals or reviews. So what this shows is our balances represent a managed adjudicative pipeline, a process that is well managed, that ensures procedural fairness, legal integrity, and timely resolution. I would like to go on to explain and show the improvement in our performance over time. In 2022-23, we had 63% performance, that is the achievement of our KPIs. 2023-2024, it increased to 76%. That was still not good enough. 2024-2025, we achieved 100% achievement of our KPIs. And I need to talk about how we got there. This has been due to a culture shift, improving the culture within the organization. Honorable members, you can have the best strategy in place, but you will not achieve it if you cannot bring your people with you, if you cannot ensure that you have an organization that sets the tone for high performance, recognizing performance, and ensuring that staff feel appreciated for what they have done. We have had a destabilization in the organization. You will see in 2022-23, the performance of 63%, and then the next year, 76%. 4 of our 5 executives exited due to numerous disciplinary action or various disciplinary action procedures that were taken against them. It was then imperative for the executive chairperson to have the organization reach a point of stability. And the constant reminder and the tone that has been set by our executive chairperson, Mr. Trevor Bailey, has been to say to staff, work with flair and not fear. And that has encouraged innovation in our organization. That has encouraged commitment by staff to ensure that they deliver. But I think what is more important is the passion that the staff members have for the work that they want to achieve. And they have that passion that is fueled by seeing the achievement of what they do, by seeing how their work impacts the economy at both a micro and a macro level. And I think once they see that, it gives them a sense of fulfillment. I'm also proud to say to you this morning that we have achieved 100% of our KPIs in Q1, 2, and 3. We intend keeping it at that level so that at the end of this financial year, 2025-2026, we would like to be able to say that we've achieved another year of 100% of our KPIs. It has not been an easy task, honorable members, to get to 100%. It takes a lot of commitment. It takes constant monitoring, putting strategies in place, because there are times when we fall behind during the quarter. But we monitor, we put together strategies to rectify the situation. We are proactive in that instance. But most of all, and most importantly, is that we are willing to work as a team. Nobody works in isolation at the NCT. No matter what the level of the individual, everybody steps together to work together to ensure that we deliver. And our teamwork has been our strength. I will now hand over to my colleague, Pnesin Moodley, to take you through the rest of the slides. Thank you, honorable members.
Good morning, Honorable DM, Honorable Chair, and Honorable members. My name is Pnesin Moodley, and it is indeed a pleasure to be able to present to you. In terms of this slide, I think there's one word that's used to describe it, and that's speed. In terms of the National Credit Act, Section 142, there's a clear obligation imposed on the tribunal, and that is to deliver justice expeditiously. We need to, at all times, give effect to that statutory mandate, and we do so by targeting key areas within our case management processes that will ensure that justice is being delivered expeditiously. In terms of issuing of set downs, which is integral process, we currently average 6.95 days. Just to clarify or add on that, there's about 9 internal processes that take place within that 6.95 days. In terms of judgment writing, we're currently averaging 8.39 days. That takes into account your judgments that are 100 pages as well as your judgments that are 10 to 15 pages. And in terms of the debt review applications that we're dealing with, our average turnaround has been 21.22 days. But just to paint a picture of that 21.22 days, is for the first 15 days of those 21.22 days, the tribunal's unable to take a matter forward as pleadings are opened and it cannot be adjudicated on. So effectively, from the time that the tribunal is able to act till the time it actually issues a ruling or an order on these debt reviews, it's roughly 6.22 days. We believe that these turnarounds show that we do deliver in terms of Section 142. We talk about DRAs or debt rearrangement applications, but it's really more than just financial relief. We look at what the benefits of debt review are, and it's something that is a key message also internally as well as externally. From DRA benefits, homes, cars are being freed from possession when the debt review application is filed with the tribunal. In our APP presentation, we presented a slide that provided some support to the indication that financial stress could often lead to mental illness. And in dealing with debt reviews as expeditiously as we do, ensuring that the terms are extended and consumers have the disposable incomes to be able to continue with a life, we'd like to think that we're supporting the overcoming of this mental illness that's caused through financial stress and hardships that can be put on families. Also, to understand or to just show the impact of debt reviews from a financial perspective, more on a macro perspective, we've looked at reports prepared by the payment distribution agents. One of the indications was the average repayment amount was 7,488 Rand and 78 cents. Debt review processes generally take about 5 years. So we looked at the last 57 months to incorporate the last 9 months of this financial year. And we've issued 167,000 odd orders. Collectively, when you look at the amount of orders that we issued with the average repayment, we can say that roughly 1.26 billion has been repaid to credit providers on a monthly basis if you look at that volume of debt review applications. Okay, so the tribunal in terms of debt review has concurrent jurisdiction. The magistrates' courts and the tribunal can adjudicate on debt review cases. So there is a comparison. In relation to that. Effectively, the decision to be made on where to go lies with the debt counselor. So it creates a competitive environment. Now, from a fee perspective, the tribunal charges a fee of 667 Rand per filing. The courts generally access through the attorneys result in legal fees being paid. The amount of 4,849 reflected here was the PDA statistics from January 2026 to say what the average amount of legal fees paid that was paid. So as you can see, that the tribunal is 86% less in cost than the magistrates' court. I'd like to just add that imagine if all debt review cases could be dealt with by the tribunal, the benefits that would be seen. One of the benefits, just to clarify also the benefit, when the legal fees are high in the debt review cases, it means that the first few installments by the consumer goes towards the payment of these debts. It extends the period of debt review. So as the fees reduce at the tribunal, it ensures that the credit providers are paid faster. In addition to the credit providers being paid faster, the consumers get out of debt review quicker as well. So this is just a snippet, and this is dealing with our more complicated cases. We call it the non-DRAs. This is just a snippet of articles that had been on the media platforms in the last, since April to the 31st of December. You can see it's wide-ranging in the sense that there are articles about defective cars and the fines that had been imposed by the tribunal. There's been the peanut butter contamination case and the administrative fine there as well as issues in relation to like contracts and the cancellation of contracts. Now, we were very pleased in the first week of January to see an article on the newspaper by The Citizen. You'll see there's quite a number of different platforms that do write articles about the tribunal. But we are quite excited to see this one. It was dated 3 January. And really what it was a highlight reel of consumer protection resolution that that had taken place over the 25 year. And this article highlighted a significant amount of cases that the tribunal had dealt with, and the different type of impact that the tribunal had for a consumer at both a macro and a micro and a macro perspective. I'm gonna just take you through about 6 cases that we've handled this year between April and December. So in this case, this was NCR versus Lacus Investment. It was an interesting one because what happened in this instance was the company Lacus was giving money to a consumer to develop property. In fact, that is what the argument that was made by the respondent or the company was. But in actual fact, it was a loan that was being issued, and this loan was disguised as a joint venture agreement for the as a joint venture agreement. And because it was disguised as a joint venture agreement, these consumers were not asked or did not undergo any affordability assessments or any of the other checks provided for in the NCA. The tribunal had a look at this case and realized that it is a disguised credit agreement, and in fact, it is a credit agreement. And as such, declared the agreements entered into as unlawful and set it aside. Tribunal issued an administrative fine of 250,000 and also ordered refunds to the affected consumers. In this case, which is a vehicle-based case, there was a vehicle that kept on overheating after purchase, just after the purchase. It kept on overheating. There was various signs on the engine showing that there's problems. But the relevance of this case is the fact that the consumer has certain rights. Now, what happened here is the respondent decided that when the defect was being brought to their attention, that instead of listening to the consumer's request to refund, they kept on repairing the car. So they repaired the car and then there was a problem, and they repaired the car again and then there was a problem. What the tribunal looked at then was the fact that there's a right of a consumer to make the election on whether they want a repair, refund, or a replacement. And the tribunal therefore ordered the refund of the case. It was the consumer's right, and also issued an administrative fine of 50,000 rand. This case was a case against a debt counselor, and the consumer in this matter was under debt counseling, and they were under debt counseling, and there was income of there was some money that the consumer received, and they decided that they're going to take this money and made the good decision of trying to clear 2 of its credit agreements. They pay the monies over to the debt counselor, but the debt counselor did not pay the money over to the credit providers. And the tribunal looked at this case. It was obviously a problem and against the NCA, and it ordered a refund of those monies, as well as it imposed 250,000 rand administrative penalty. This case, which is currently on internal appeal at the moment, is relating to a chain of restaurants, Bryblock. There's about 16 of these stores in South Africa at the moment, and what they had done is on their invoices, on the bills, they used to add a service fee. They used to add a service fee on the bills per item that was purchased to consume. They also did not have an address on any of their sales invoices, and they did not disclose the service fee within their menu. The tribunal had a look at that case, realized that it was completely against what was contained in the Consumer Protection Act, and they declared an administrative fine of declared the conduct prohibited, and an administrative fine of R1 million was imposed on Bryblock. Okay, this next case here, it was in relation to an auction. The consumer purchased a game farm under an auction, but what it found out after it paid its deposit was roughly 1.2 million rand. After paying its deposit, it realized that the marketing material upfront seemed to show a dam to be part of the property, whereas after the deposit was paid and the information was shared with the consumer that the dam was actually not part of the property, the tribunal held that to be a material misrepresentation and ordered the refund of the 1.2 million and issued an administrative fine of 250,000 rand. Okay, in this case, this is NCC versus Lana Jane Diaga and others. There was an advert on a magazine that said, "Win a dream wedding valued at 500,000 rand." Each time you applied, you had to pay 5 rand for entering. A lot of consumers won this, and they were given an MOU to sign, memorandum of understanding to sign, and then they had to pay an amount of 25,000 to 60, between 25 to 60,000 rand. When the case came to us, the respondent argued that it was not, in fact, a competition. It was, in fact, a reality show that was being published. However, the tribunal felt that the adverts were misleading and deceptive, and they ordered the refund of all monies to the consumers, as well as imposed a fine of 250,000 rand. Before I move on to the next slide, I also just want to touch on the consent order granted by the tribunal on the case of the National Consumer Commission versus We Buy Cars, and more in light of the process and how that unfolded. The tribunal issued a notice of complete filing, which is an agreement that all the application papers are in order, on the 5th of December. Because of the urgency of this matter and the fact that it consented, the tribunal then requested the parties to waive pleadings, which they agreed to do. On the 17th of December, the matter was then set down for adjudication for the 19th of December. 17th of December, it was set down for the 19th of December. We issued a ruling on the 22nd of December. What's interesting was the order. The order agreement allowed for the amendment of the terms and conditions of the We Buy Cars agreements. Redress took the consumers to the value of 3.4 million rand. It had an interesting item where it was that 300, the company must employ 300 new employees within a 5-year period. We Buy Cars must engage in a consumer awareness program, and they also agreed to a 2.5 million rand administrative fine. Okay, so on this slide, we say, and I think we've said it also at our APP, we are here to serve is something we stand by. And these are just some of the positive highlights that we've received in this last little period. And whilst we're not perfect, it's always a positive thing for us to receive such comments, such as "You were so impressive," "You guys rock," your willingness to help, great service, sincere appreciation coming from consumers, as well as notes from senior legal advisors of the bank. Show us that we are doing what we set out to do, and we're doing it with the utmost fairness and objectivity as well. As I move to the next slide, the next slide is a snippet that we've received, or the snippet that we've taken from some of our interviews. So I'm going to pause and let the video speak for itself.
Good afternoon. My name, everyone was so helpful in assisting me in this matter. They were phoning me, they were informing me what documents to complete. They were so helpful throughout the process. And please send my message also to everyone that was assisting me. You guys are doing a wonderful job, and let it not only be for me, but let it be for every consumer and everyone that is in need of help.
Before I got to the tribunal, it was a nightmare. But when I finally reached the tribunal, I think everything was handled professionally. I did receive some support. There were instances where I was accommodated as a layman over the other party that was being represented by a lawyer. So all of that, I did appreciate it from the professionalism of the tribunal staff.
Good afternoon.
Okay. The next slide just speaks about our stakeholders' research and impact. And from a research perspective, we've developed 2 research papers in this financial period. But why did we develop it? We developed it because we want to be able to provide our principals with evidence-based contributions on policy development and stay abreast of what is happening in the industry at an early level as well as at a later level when the matters are with us. We've also had 25 engagements over Q1 to Q3, and that success is reflected in the high volumes of filings. Now, in our stakeholder engagements, we've, as Ms. Alwas pointed to the convener role that we are currently seeking to playing. We've engaged with associations such as the Banking Association of South Africa, Credit Association of South Africa, the different ombuds, the Debt Counseling Association, as well as the Pawnbroking Association. So we've identified the stakeholders, and we've been very forceful in our ability to ensure that we get benefit, and so does South Africa get benefit from our engagements. From an impact report perspective, the impact report looks at the micro level and the macro perspective of impact of the work that we do. Whilst it does have a benefit externally, it also has a benefit internally in terms of building that internal culture, within the organization, of focusing on the purpose of why we do what we do. In terms of access, recently we've become a member of the Consumer Protection Forum that happened around October, November last year. It was an absolute benefit to be part of it, as it has helped us in terms of reaching out to the different communities and the different provinces within South Africa. In the last week, we were at the Northwest talking about the secondhand motor vehicle industry. Later this week, we'll be in Limpopo, also having discussions in terms of consumer protection. One of the internal changes that we've made is we needed to make filings as simple as possible for consumers. So we've developed explainer videos, we've developed visual process maps, we've come up with a new strategy in terms of consultations. And we've done that all with the purpose of trying to ensure that consumers are able to easily access us. And what we found is when we compared the Q1 to 3 of the previous financial year with the Q1 to 3 of this financial year, that we actually had a 56.84% increase in complete filings. So we are seeing some benefits in relation to that work that's being done. We are available on multiple filing channels. Online, we are available manually, we are available through XML, through a mobile app as well. In terms of industry partnerships or industry collaboration, we are now collaborating at a provincial level as well as at a national level with various associations. But key or central to what we do is just to ensure that no one is left behind. I think from all the work that we do, we still need to ensure that there's no consumer that's actually left behind or outside the reach of the tribunal. And just to make that happen, we ensure that we go wherever we need to go. If we need to go to a certain place to host a hearing, that's what we will do. Our motto in terms of that is that no one will be left behind when it comes to applications for the tribunal. Okay. On accessibility from a provincial level, what we looked at is debt reviews that were filed between 1 April and 31 January 2026. And we tried to see where these applications had come from. So we can see that the majority of the applications had come from consumers that's residing in Gauteng, followed by KZN, Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and so forth. So you can see there's the tribunal is reaching South Africa. There is an element that's written as unknown, and really it is based on the fact of how we collate this information. So through our digital infrastructure and technologies that we've had, we were never able to present such information to this committee before. This is the first time we're doing so. One of the, where we draw this information from is the applications that's filed by the debt counselors. So in drawing that information, the 12% did not have the details of where the consumer had been residing from for us to draw it. But what we can note from something like that is that it's more the smaller debt counselors that would not have that type of information contained. So that 12% is most likely fitting into the non-city areas. Now, just to take this a little bit further, it's broken down into the case numbers here. You can see ranging from 741 cases up until the 15,000 per province. But we also looked at a 2022 Stats SA census just to do a comparator to see in terms of population size and the applications or cases that we've received. So you can see in terms of the Gauteng that the percentage is higher in comparison to population size. You can see in other areas how the differences are. However, it is something that we still are working on. So I think as this was the first time we were able to draw the stats, it provides us with a good indication of how we can move forward as well. The breakdown, the same breakdown that was done is just also broken down here into the districts that the different districts within each province. So you can see it's a variety of districts. It's a variety of districts as well. But really, all of this is the capabilities to deliver on that type of statistic is really through the data we collect and our capability in terms of our digital capabilities. And with that said, I'm going to hand over to our CIO, Mr. Bax Nombete, to proceed with the presentation. And thank you.
Thank you, Pranesan. Good morning, Honorable Deputy Minister, and good morning to honorable and distinguished colleagues of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee. On this next slide, really is to demonstrate and to give you a background into our technology implementation, which is enabling the capabilities which have been outlined by my distinguished colleagues a bit earlier. Chair, very briefly earlier on, when we started our technology program, which was around about 2013, we made some critical decisions on the basis and approach of how we're going to implement these technology interventions. And I just want to mention briefly two things that we did, which have enabled us or have enabled the success of our technological implementation as we continue to execute on our mandate. The first thing was to decide on the architecture which we were going to use which we were going to implement to enable our processes, our business processes. And we decided on the Microsoft architecture. And the reason we decided on the Microsoft architecture was really for two critical reasons, or three, can I say. One is the scalability of that technology. So as volumes grow and workloads increase, there is no need for complex maneuverability or change in direction in terms of the technology that you're using. So there's seamless continuity on the same platform, which can handle increased volumes and scalability in that regard. And then the second is security. And security, as we know, has become such a critical area within technology these days, particularly data security. And of course, the data that we hold, which is confidential consumer data, confidential financial data belonging to consumers, is of utmost and of a paramount importance that it is secured in a manner in which it cannot be compromised. And then the third area is that Microsoft is a worldwide best practice architecture. And if you adopt the worldwide best practice architecture, we found that then it's easy when there are issues or when there are problems, technological problems, to resolve them very quickly and easy, because the access to information on the latest developments on how to address these issues is widely available from a worldwide perspective. So those are some of the reasons from a technological perspective. The other approach that we took is to adopt an in-house approach to the development of our core systems. And what that has enabled us to do is, as the business evolves and more functionality and enhancement is required of the platform that we've developed, that we can we are flexible, and we can move very quickly to add those additional functionalities onto the system as required by our users, both internally and externally. So, Chair, given that background, the system which we have developed, as you will see from this graph here, has allowed the tribunal to increase its processing of particularly debt rearrangement applications exponentially. So essentially, from that graph, you can see that in 2016, which was when we really introduced the bulk of the system, there was an exponential growth in the throughput of the processing of debt rearrangement applications through the system, and which today has resulted in us being able to process up to 80 cases a day per tribunal member using this technology. And roughly this technology, Chair, is set into a number of areas, but essentially we have the online e-filing capability, where the external debt counselors can submit their cases electronically, either via an application program interface, if they have bulk applications, or via a simple e-filing electronic form, which speeds up that capability. We then have the internal workflow processing, which allows the speedy allocation of those submitted applications out to the tribunal members for them to adjudicate. And then we have the allocation electronically of those cases to tribunal members, such that they can they sign on to the system online, and then they adjudicate on the cases online with all the necessary information that is provided. And just one point, just to go back a bit, When the applications are submitted by the external providers, it's the system that does all the validations to ensure all the information and supporting documents have been submitted correctly. So all those checks are done by the system. So in that respect, it is very, very quick, easily, and seamless. Next slide, please. So that is our current platform. Now with ICT systems, as we know, they evolve with the business. So when you develop business applications, it's not a static development. As the business evolves and as we evolve this application, and so there's a continuous improvement process which is going on with our in-house team. By the way, our in-house team, as I said, is composed of experienced staff as well as a lot of interns. Earlier on, our COO mentioned the fact that we've got an aggressive internship program bringing people in from the ground level. So we have a healthy complement of interns who have come in and who we've trained and who have become critical in terms of the ongoing support and participating in the development of the system. But in our continuous enhancement program, a couple of the major areas that we are entering into now is artificial intelligence. And we have two critical projects going on in terms of enhancing the system at this point in time. The one is the introduction of AI and automated decision processing of the debt rearrangement applications at the adjudication level. So currently, although the tribunal members receive the applications electronically and they adjudicate online, it is the tribunal members who make the rules-based decisions by looking at the supporting documents, comparing what has been submitted with what is stipulated in the prescripts of the Act in order to either grant or refuse an order. What we are now doing is to develop the system that those business rules decision-making process will be done by the system. And the system will then automatically grant the orders. In the initial, once we release this capability, all those orders will then go out to the tribunal members, who will then do a quality assurance check to make sure that the decisions that the system made is correct. And if those decisions, if the tribunal member then decides, no, those decisions are correct, then that order will be released with the tribunal member's signature back to the debt counselor. By the way, the issuing of the orders back to the debt counselors now is also electronic. That whole process is also electronic, and it'll continue to be electronic as well. And then, Chair, we are also, Honorable Minister, we are also introducing another key initiative, which is the artificial intelligence to automate the process of condonation applications. So as applications are submitted for the review and the decision making and the adjudication of condonation applications, we are introducing artificial intelligence into that for the system to automatically make the decision on that. Again, initially, of course, there'll be a strong quality assurance intervention in that to make sure that what goes out and the quality and the integrity and the accuracy is maintained in that respect. So that's where we're going in that, Chair. Next slide, please. And then, Chair, another key aspect and another key importance for us is our infrastructure. Again, our approach to our infrastructure is we have an in-house infrastructure and we manage that infrastructure in-house. We do have, of course, external support and expertise where it's required, but we essentially manage our infrastructure, servers, network, all those in-house. And that has allowed us to control and maintain an availability in Q1, Q2, Q3 of this the reporting financial year 25-26 of 99.88%, which is above the threshold. Our minimum threshold that is acceptable is 98%. So we have been able to consistently improve on that or consistently meet the requirement above that particular threshold. I mentioned earlier on as well, security is of paramount importance and of critical importance for us. And so we have a whole area where we continuously monitor, evaluate all security function and processes and enhance security functions and processes to make sure that that data is secure. And in addition to that, we on an annual basis, we have an external cybersecurity audit, or rather, we have a cybersecurity audit where which is split into two: the external part and the internal part. We do penetration tests with an external provider. The external independent provider comes in, does those penetration tests, both internally and externally, provides us with the findings, and then provides us with the recommendations that we need to address to ensure that we maintain security. In technology, as we know, because security is such of importance now, and unfortunately, the negative side is your system can be secure today, but because of the hackers and the way that negative side happens, they are continuously evolving new ways of penetrating critical systems. So one has to always be a step ahead in that process. And so that's why we have this process going. And in that way, Honorable Minister and parliamentary portfolio delegates, we have been able to successfully have a platform, technology platform, to enable all the business processes which we spoken about earlier on. Thank you, Chair. And I'll hand over back to Pranesan at this stage.
Thanks, Bax. Can I just ask our COO to come in on the slide, please?
Thank you. So, Honourable Deputy Minister Godlimpi said to the tribunal when we were developing our KPIs is to really think out of the box. Look at going beyond your mandate to really contribute to the DTI initiatives and their strategic goals. And that's what we've done in terms of other KPIs in our APP. One of the KPIs is to achieve a clean audit. And honourable members, we have achieved 13 clean consecutive audits, contributing then to an ethical state. We're also looking at how do we contribute to inclusive growth and ensuring SMME development. And that has been done through KPIs that talk about training SMMEs. So far, we've trained 17 SMMEs. The target is 25, and the rest will be done in Q4. And in next year, we're looking at really expanding this to reach more SMMEs to ensure that we can impart knowledge, certain skills that will really help them thrive in their business environment. Payment of SMMEs also becomes important, and we have achieved our KPI, which is below the target of 15 days. We've achieved paying our providers in 13.58 days, and that is to ensure that our SMMEs have the adequate cash flow for their business requirements. Another KPI was really developing a financial sustainability report, and that has been done. And that report really looks at what are the various revenue streams. We know that our grant is the major revenue stream. We also receive filing fees. How do we maximize our financial resources? How do we look at ICT strategies to help us with our ability to ensure better financial sustainability and our stakeholder engagement in terms of driving the number of cases that we receive? And in all those areas, we achieved all the KPIs from the financial perspective. The HR component, the HR KPIs, is really about building leadership, building people. And we are on quite a mission now to ensure that we fill as many of our positions as possible. We have looked at mentorship in action, and we currently have 4 females that are on an extensive mentorship program within the NCT. We look at having a culture driving strategy, and what we have done as the NCT is in 2 consecutive years, we have actually done a comprehensive culture survey. And that is really turning the mirror to ourselves to say, where are the gaps? Where do we need to enhance? Where do we need to build the organization from a culture point of view? And how do we continuously shift to a more positive culture? And the results have been very pleasing. We have taken the action plans that the organization needs to implement to make sure that we get better at what we do. And one of the things we've looked at is really around, we've introduced a walk with me, talk to me, where staff are able to engage with the managers. We do walking sessions, talking sessions. We have women's focus groups, because that was an area identified as an area of weakness in the culture survey. So we have various women's focus groups where women just sit together, experience and share what their experiences are in terms of the challenges in the workplace and from a more personal level, and how do we build and strengthen each other to deliver at the end of the day. There were some jobs within the NCT that, and this came out in the culture survey, that said, these are becoming very mundane positions and are making some individuals in those roles feel demotivated. So we embarked on a whole job evaluation strategy, which also ensures that it gives more meaning to some of the positions. So we really look at, while we do culture surveys as part of a KPI, we also have a KPI that talks about the interventions that we are implementing to ensure that we action what comes out of the culture survey. The next slide is really just emphasizing the SMME development, where the training focused on marketing skills and growing your business. I will now move on to youth development. Youth development is a key and a fundamental area in government. How do we contribute towards that? We have gone beyond just getting and employing interns. We're currently looking at getting 13 interns. We've got 5 interns that focus really on the ICT initiatives that the CIO spoke about. We're really looking at building and enhancing their skills. So 13 interns is our target in terms of what we want to get to eventually. And we're also looking at going beyond that. So you will see from the slide and the pictures that are depicted here is our HR and facilities manager went into the communities. She's done 3 public training sessions to the youth to take them through a practical guide on how to become more employable. So that is our contribution in terms of, we know how important the youth are to us, and we are committed to ensuring that they have a better future. And as the NCT, we will go out and we will help them in terms of where they require the necessary skills to be able to become more employable in a country where the unemployment rate is so high. So, honorable members, that is our contribution towards youth development. We also look at job shadowing, so we bring in students. That's one of our KPIs as well. Where we bring in students, we give them exposure to various positions and career paths within the NCT to actually give them the practical exposure to what happens in a job environment.
Sorry, Ms. Simpson. Just apologies. If you can move towards the closure, because you've gone past your time. It's been over an hour now. So we are just mindful because we want to engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The next slide really just talks about the recognition. It was an area that we needed to focus on. So we've addressed it in the culture survey, recognizing our team, and we celebrated our 100% performance achievement and the 13 consecutive audit. Developing women, making sure that women become our leaders. This is just some of the pictures in terms of the strategies we put in place to ensure that that is then met. And as I spoke about, it's about wellness, empowerment, and sisterhood that we're striving to achieve at the NCT. I'll hand over now to our CFO, who will take us through the financial management aspects. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Deputy Minister and honorable members. In the interest of time, I'm going to try and do this as briefly as possible. This snapshot is of the revenue of the National Consumer Tribunal for the period ended December 2025. If you look at the last line, total income, you'll see that we generated 11.9 million rand more revenue than what we anticipated. This is a percentage of 70%. The main reason for this is the filing fees, which is income we generate from filings, have exceeded the budget by 70%, with the total collection to date being amounting to 23.7 million rand. So we collected 23.7 million rand by the end of December. So that's a very positive snapshot from the revenue perspective. We could move over to the expenditure slide, which is the next slide. From an expenditure perspective, you would see that our operational expenditure is underspent by 33%, and our capital expenditure is also underspent in the region of about 81%. The main reason for operational expenditure being underspent can be split between two categories. One is compensation of employees, which is underspent at a rate of 43%, and this is mainly due to two reasons. One is primarily due to vacancies. The second reason is there's 6 million rand in compensation of employee budget, which is earmarked to be a contribution to the employee pension fund. And we're anticipating and have our fingers crossed that we'll be able to spend this money by the end of March 2026. On the goods and services side, which is underspent by 5%, is mainly due to due to software licenses, where we underspent in this area, but this was because we didn't have much procurement capacity. However, there's a significant amount of software licenses which are currently being procured and would probably be finalized by the end of March 2026. It's important to note that we incurred, as part of legal services, about 4.6 million rand, primarily in relation to an investigation into alleged procurement irregularities arising from a whistleblower complaint and internal disciplinary processes, as well as legal assistance and representation in other matters. Honorable members, this is just a brief snapshot of our finances. In essence, our revenue is significantly above budget, yet our expenditure we have underspent to date, mainly because of vacancies and lack of procurement capacity. Thank you, Chair. I'll hand over to our chairperson, Mr. Bailey, to conclude the presentation.
Thank you very much. If we can then just quickly move to the next slide. All I simply want to say at this stage, this is the end of our story today, and it's a privilege then to present this video to you of the NCT team celebrating their service to the South African consumer and consumer credit industry. However, there is a major danger warning. Beware of certain male dancers who need new dancing shoes. Thank you, Prenison.
Look make it happen, 'cause we believe it. Look who we are the dreamers. We make it happen, 'cause we can see it. It's to the one that keep the passion, respect, oh yeah. It's to the one that can imagine, respect, oh yeah. Gather round now, look at me. Respect and love the only way. If you wanna come with me. The door is open every day. This 1 + 2 rendezvous, all invited. That's what we do, how we do. Look who we are the dreamers. We make it happen, 'cause we believe it. Look who we are the dreamers. We make it happen, 'cause we can see it. It's to the one that keep the passion, respect, oh yeah. It's to the one that can imagine.
Thank you very much. We've really taken almost 15 minutes more time. Let's allow the second presentation to come through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and present if please let me know if you can see the presentation.
We can see the presentation, but must be in slide mode. Thanks.
Thank you. Just sorry. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairperson. We will try and we are aware that we are running late a little bit, so we'll try and streamline our presentation. Again, as members will know, this is a summary of our performance for the first 3 quarters of the year. We are happy to confirm that so far we are tracking positively in terms of the targets. As the DM did indicate earlier, late last year, the department allowed entities to review and recalibrate where possible their APPs, and based on the recalibrated APP targets, we are tracking at 100%. Prior to that, we were tracking at 87.5%, and that 87.5% was slightly exaggerated, and we'll speak to that later on in the presentation. However, I thought that it would be useful that at the beginning of the presentation, we just sort of set the scene as to the relevance or what the takeover regulation panel is. So the takeover regulation panel is essentially is part of the capital markets infrastructure. So South African capital markets depend on a network of institutions and regulators that together ensure markets function with integrity transparency, and fairness. This infrastructure includes securities regulators, stock exchanges, clearing and settlement systems, and bodies that govern market conduct. The Takeover Regulation Panel forms part of this infrastructure, as indicated, specifically within the market conduct and integrity layer, by regulating one of the most consequential categories of capital markets transactions, namely the change of ownership and control of companies. Essentially, the Takeover Regulation Panel is South Africa's dedicated regulator for mergers, acquisitions, and takeovers involving regulated companies. Primarily, we're talking about those companies that are listed on the JSE, as well as those that are unlisted public companies, and in certain instances, even some private companies. We operate, as members will be aware, under the policy oversight of the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. What we do as the panel is that we ensure that when ownership or control of a company changes hands, the process is fair, transparent, and properly disclosed. We protect the rights of minority shareholders. We ensure that all shareholders are treated equitably and enforce mandatory offer rules, which require a person who acquires a controlling stake to extend an offer to the remaining holders on equal terms. Where necessary, the panel issues rulings, grants exemptions, and convenes specialist committees to adjudicate complex regulatory questions. How we fit institutionally, so unlike in other jurisdictions where takeover oversight is consolidated within one securities regulator, think in the US, an entity like the SEC. In South Africa, just like in the United Kingdom, we maintain a dedicated specialist body for this function. This reflects the quasi-judicial and highly technical character of takeover regulation. The Takeover Regulation Panel works alongside, but separately from other regulators, including FSCA or the FSCA, the exchanges, and other entities such as, and other regulatory entities such as the Competition Commission, as well as the CIPC, as a complementary part of a broader regulatory ecosystem. Our specialist focus enables the depth of expertise that complex corporate transactions demand. Insofar as our relevance or why we matter as a regulatory entity, investor confidence in South Africa's capital markets depends in part on the assurance that corporate control transactions are conducted with integrity. The panel provides that assurance by enforcing rules governing takeovers. The panel protects ordinary shareholders, including retirement funds and other institutional investors, from being prejudiced when companies change hands. In this way, the panel contributes directly to the conditions that attract and retain investment in South Africa, in the South African economy. In this regard, for instance, over the past year, we have overseen the closure of FDI type transactions, including the acquisition of Renegent by ASPI, which is a US-based and NASDAQ-listed entity, the acquisition of MultiChoice Group by Canal Plus, which is a Anglo-French media company, with the total transaction structure, including the restructuring of the South African operating entity of around 55 billion rands. as well as the acquisition of a household name in South African industrials sector, which is Barloworld, which was overtaken by primarily a black-led consortium with Saudi investors, Encha consortium, for about 23 billion rand. So we've overseen over the past 12 months the finalization of roughly 55 billion rands in FDI type transactions. We are self-funded through levies and fees charged on regulatory transaction, and therefore do not draw on the national fiscus for our operational costs. Insofar, so I've already spoken to our mandates. The panel size is fairly small in comparison to most other government entities, with a staff complement of less than 9 people, of which only 4 are responsible for the technical work of the panel, notwithstanding the size of the transactions we do. And then on top of that, we have a panel which is the equivalent of our board of directors or our accounting authority, comprising of 11 members, of which 2 are the commissioners for the CIPC, as well as the Competition Commission, as well as then 2 representatives of the 2 main exchanges in South Africa, being the JSE as well as the Cape Town Stock Exchange. In addition to that, the minister has appointed 6 other experts to essentially assist in the functions of the panel. These members will assist from a governance perspective, and in certain instances will form part of the Takeover Specialist Committee, where decisions of the panel's executive staff are reviewed before parties are able to review those decisions in courts under PAJA. They must first exhaust the internal remedies, which then the specialist committee would sit as an internal appeals mechanisms or review mechanisms in the event that someone is unhappy with our decision. So the panel or the board members, all of which are non-executive on the panel, will then from time to time also perform these takeover specialist committee functions. I think that is it from a sort of high-level overview of what the panel is and what it does and its composition. As indicated, because of the size of the transactions that we do not unfortunately have large volumes. However, the transactions that we do obviously are fairly complicated, just based on the size of the transaction, which means that the parties are represented by highly sophisticated advisors, both who are from a legal and financial sectors, who then basically present these transactions for approval before the panel. Every now and then, there will be technical disputes which require the panel to then respond to those questions. An example of this would be in October last year, a few days before the finalization, meaning the date for payment of the purchase price of the Barloworld transaction, there was a complaint regarding the actual payment that needed to be made to shareholders. And a decision was then referred to the panel for adjudication. Essentially, the question was whether the proposed payment aligned with what had been promised to shareholders, and we needed to consider and make a determination regarding that question. the decision was taken effectively within a 24-hour cycle, notwithstanding the size of the decision, which was essentially almost a quarter of $1 billion. And that decision was, once issued, was essentially accepted without challenge, notwithstanding how quickly it had been given and the complexity of the issues that were under consideration. Why I mention this is because it plays a critical part in our service levels as well as our APP targets, which we'll then speak to. We think a key role that we as a panel and as a specialist body play is the speed within which we're able to deliver these highly complex decisions without the involvement of courts in most instances within a short time frame in order to be able to respond to the demands of capital markets transactions where time is of the essence and therefore lengthy delays actually might have a negative impact. So when I mention this, I'm just contextualizing why we then believe that our biggest contributor to government priorities is the speed within which we are able to essentially resolve these highly complex corporate questions within a very short period of time in order essentially to keep our capital markets attractive to both domestic and international investors. It's worth noting that South African capital markets are estimated at around 24 trillion rands, of which a significant component of it are equity capital markets. And therefore, whenever these markets there are these transactions for corporate control, it becomes quite critical for us to be able to essentially keep pace with the expectations of the market. And to date, we are proud to be able to say that there is no transaction that ever gets delayed because the panel is delaying in making a determination of this of the questions that are brought before it. So I thought that context then explains part of the performance that we then have set out both for Q1 up to Q3. As indicated, a critical part of the work of the panel is this issue of how quickly are we able to issue decisions that are brought to us. And as indicated, what we've set out as a target is essentially to target to basically issue our decisions and rulings within 5 business days once we've received the complete application. And by complete application, what we mean is, in some instances, someone might deliver an application and we might then require additional documentation in order to properly consider the matter. Once all of that is in place, we are able to deliver a decision essentially within 5 business days. As indicated earlier, in the 3 transactions which are FDI in nature, the multi-choice transaction required, before the transaction could commence, a decision on whether in fact a mandatory offer was required to be made. And after the parties had spent almost a month providing submissions to the panel in order for it to determine whether a mandatory offer was due in this case, meaning whether this 55 billion restructure of multi-choice was due, the panel was able to turn around its decision essentially within a space of 48 hours including essentially a weekend, because we did believe that time was of the essence, and we are proud to say that, notwithstanding the significant size of the transaction and the consequences for Canal Plus, who were against a mandatory offer having been triggered, we're able to issue that decision, and it was accepted without challenge. So when we say our decisions are issued within 5 business days, it is irrespective of the complexity of the questions at hand. It is irrespective of the type of advisors that the parties on the other side have. And for the most part, essentially all those decisions are taken by the panel's technical staff, which is essentially 4 people, including 2 junior people with less than 5 years experience. And it's again testament to the level of expertise that sits within the panel, and the fact that we are not consistently in the newspapers for with people criticizing our decisions is again testament of the value we play in this economy. With that said, you will note that the APP targets have been adjusted from this 5 business day ruling, and the reason for this was because in a few instances, for example, in Q2 in the current financial year, we only we're unable to meet this 5 business day. I think we missed the deadline by a day or two on two rulings, which then meant that this target was wholly missed. And missing it in the context where there's 9 targets, and when the target was originally 100%, it meant that you then effectively, if you miss 2 rulings, you end up basically at about 98%. However, the weighting on an APP basis then means that whole target is missed. And we then thought we were setting ourselves up for failure, especially since we've set a very aggressive turnaround target of 5 business days. So we've now adjusted that, still at a very high rate at above 92%. And on that basis, we've then been able to basically maintain that high performance level. And over the 3 quarters, we have been able essentially to achieve 100% fulfillment of our targets. In some instances, there are APP targets which we've listed as not applicable. And this is primarily due to the fact that things like investigations, etc., are dependent on whether we do receive complaints or not. So you'll see in this quarter they were non-applicable, but in the subsequent quarters there was 1 that was listed last year. Sorry, two that were listed in Q2 and Q3. So for the most part, this is primarily the sort of technical targets of the panel. And again, we're happy to say that we are tracking positively in terms of performance. Then in the sort of other targets, we also recognize the importance of things like transformation and contributing within our limited means to things like exposing people to the work of the panel so that people can pursue careers in that space. But again, we are tracking quite positively here. What we mean by BE a compliance service provider, for instance, we're talking about entities that have a compliance status level of level 4 all the way to level 1. And we are happy to say that although our target is to procure 70%, is to spend 70% of our procurement spend on these type of service providers, we are actually tracking ahead of that at 86% of all our spend being spent with people who are BE status level 4 to 1. And as I say, I think that the performance is the same throughout. And to keep to my promise, I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Ms. Zoliswa Kwechana, who's then going to talk to our finance targets, which again are all tracking positively. Thank you, Chairperson.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, committee members, and the deputy and all other colleagues on the call. I think maybe just to give a bit of context and background. So how the panel generates revenue, it's mainly from 3 sources. One being what we call the surcharge fees. So if you look at the bottom of this table, this is what's at the end. So it's something akin to a tax, which is 25% of what listed companies pay as a listing fee is then also payable to the panel. So this is paid by all listed companies, both companies that have a primary listing in South Africa and ones that have a secondary listing in South Africa. Then there are fees which second from the bottom, which are referred to as ruling and consultation fees, so as well as documentation and hearing fees. So these are fees that are payable for the actual technical work that the panel does. So as part of the panel's work of reviewing documents, providing opinions, rulings, etc., which Zano has just spoken to, the panel, per the Act, charges fees that are based on hours spent on transactions, at times based on the value of a transaction, and at times where we deal with smaller private companies, these are also based on an hourly rate. These are called rulings and consultation fees. And then lastly, the panel then also gets revenue from interest income. So this is revenue that is received from funds that the panel invests with the SARB, and how the panel has these funds. This is basically kind of like a war chest for the panel, because there are instances where the parties that we regulate do take the panel to court. And as everybody on the call would be aware, that litigation can be quite costly. So as part of the panel's operations, we make sure that we do keep these funds in the event that we find ourselves in lengthy litigation. We have funds to defend the panel, but also because the key operations, which are the revenue from the surcharge fees and the revenue from consultations, is at times not enough to cover the panel's operations, the interest income then bridges that gap. From an income perspective, the variances that are in brackets, that's an accounting credit, it's actually an inflow. So members will note, if they go to documentation fees, that there was a 23% increment in those fees. And the reason for that, previously, the panel would not charge the hourly rate, especially for advisory opinions. We would basically just charge everybody a flat fee, but at the beginning of this year, we started charging consultants, which in turn use our advice and provide those services to their stakeholders and charge them at an hourly rate. And we saw a 23.3% increment in our documentation fees. The interest income saw a slight decline that goes hand in hand with what is the capital that is invested, the rulings and consultation fees that is dependent on market activity, and the surcharge fee is the reason that is the squared amount. That is because we get at the beginning of the year, we get the listing, how much the JSE and the Cape Town Stock Exchange is going to charge the listed companies, and that as previously communicated, that's just 25% of that listing fee. Then with regards to the administrative expenses, there was a variance of 19.3%. This variance is based on various factors, but the key savings is as a result of legal fees. So in the first 3 quarters, we did not need to consult lawyers. The reason that the panel consults lawyers is mostly when the decisions of the panel are taken under review, where the specialist committee will have to appoint a set of lawyers to assist them in making decisions. They would consult with lawyers. In other cases as well, the executive of the panel would need to consult lawyers, because when they appear in front of the specialist committee, they need counsel to do so. They need to be represented, similar to how the parties are also represented by counsel. Then the panel remuneration, there were a couple of ad hoc committees that were necessary, especially considering that in the current financial year, majority of the panel members were new panel members, especially those appointed by the minister. So there was a need of a significant number of ad hoc meetings during the year. And then the saving on the personnel costs, this is a result of a vacancy. But this is a result of a vacancy at a more junior level. The personnel costs is significantly lower than what it would be if the panel had an executive. As I think the DM and Zano alluded to, we are still working on getting a full-time executive in concurrence with the finance ministry. Then this slide speaks to questions that we've had from the committee previously when we appeared in front of the committee. I will take the presentation as read, so I won't go through and read these questions, but we had just prepared the slide so that members can see the questions that they asked us previously and see the detailed responses that we had given to them. And on that note, we will end our presentation. Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Recording in progress.
Is there anything, DM, you would like to add, or we can proceed with the questions from members? Honorable members, the platform is yours now. Andre, you will assist me with the hands.
I will do so, sir.
Honorable members, you are invited to comment and engage with the presentations, both presentations.
Mr. Chance raised his hand so far, Chair.
Honorable Chance.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks very much for the presentations. Both impressive presentations. And if you would indulge me, Chair, I'd like to start with a question to Mr. Bailey. Could you please, Mr. Bailey, tell us what is the length of service of your executive team that have presented today? I need an answer to that question before proceeding with my further questions. Is Mr. Bailey listening?
Mr. Bailey, are you there? Are you able to provide the answer to Honorable Chance? Okay.
Perhaps if Mr. Bailey isn't able to, perhaps Ms. Alwa-Simpson could answer the question.
Yes, yes, Honorable Chance. So in terms of the team, myself, I've been at the NCT for 20 years in different roles. I was sent to set up the organization from the DTIC. Promotion Mudley has been with the NCT approximately, I think, 13 years, as well as Baxnom Vete. What I do need to state is Baxnom Vete was brought back into the organization. He is currently on contract, and that was due to, as I stated before, about the executives that exited. And then we have Mr. Ahmed Mullah, who is also here for, I think, approximately 10 years. I don't have the exact number of years, but that is the information, Honorable Chance.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, can I continue, Chair?
Yes.
Yes, and I think that the reason I asked that question and the answers to the question are highly relevant to the performance that we've witnessed this morning. And essentially, what we're seeing is that top management stability and longevity has clearly had an impact on the performance of this organization, which unfortunately, Deputy Minister, cannot be said for many of the other entities, not all of them, but some of them within the DTIC family, if I can call it that. So I think the question that I need to first of all ask is, what lessons can be learned from this continuity and the culture, as you said, culture driving strategy in this organization and applied to other entities within the DTIC family? So that's really a question aimed at the chairperson as well as the deputy minister. Then I'd like to ask, why is it the chairperson and not a non-executive chairperson? It seems rather irregular that you should have an executive chairperson from a governance perspective. Perhaps you could just come back to me on that one. Then, so far as the National Consumer Tribunal is concerned, do you have any guidelines on the scale of administrative fines that you levy? How do you determine how big or small that fine should be? And then how many credit users were sequestrated as a result of a debt review not being concluded successfully? And does the National Consumer NCT actually have the powers to issue such an order for sequestration, or does that have to be done by a court? Has the NCT been approached regarding the problem of debt counselors cold calling consumers and offering to provide their services? There was a program on 702 recently. Wendy Nola, the consumer journalist, was talking to somebody, a debt counselor representative, and this seems to be a big problem. Is that something that the Consumer Tribunal has become aware of? Then Mr. Mondletti was describing the excellent systems that have been developed over the last 10 years or so. And you say that you're developing them in-house and not using CETA, the State Information Technology Agency. That gives you much greater control of your systems. And do you think, again, there's a lesson to be learned there for other government entities? You talked about your cybersecurity prevention measures, which is excellent, as we have seen how cyber attacks can cripple organizations. But perhaps you could just describe your disaster recovery plan and how that has been put into place. Right. In terms of the 6 million rand allocation to the pension fund, is this a once-off top-up, and is the pension fund now fully funded? Then turning to the takeover regulation panel. You mentioned the interaction with other entities, but I'm curious to know in a bit more detail how you interact with the Competition Commission and the Competition Tribunal, because clearly there are issues where competition matters come up when the takeover happens. And so perhaps you could give us some examples of where those interactions actually are taking place. Then how many of your rulings have been taken taken on review to the High Court. I'm thinking, for example, of Caxton, the impact case, which is ongoing, and I think the issue of the Novus Mustec ruling has been controversial. Is there some statistic relating to that you can give us? And then finally, my question regarding the takeover special committee. How often, which is an ad hoc committee, but how often has that committee been formed? And is it sitting currently, or is a special committee sitting currently to adjudicate on any particular matters? That's all for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Further heads.
Apologies, Chair. Mr. Thring, Ms. Mosakatsi, and Mr. Langa raised their hands, Chair.
In that order, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, let me firstly also welcome the presentations, and I think it's inspiring to see the standards, the high standards that have been set in terms of what we have been presented with, and the achievement of your KPIs and goals and so on that have been set, both within NCT as well as the TRP. I think that perhaps one of the lessons here that one could take away is the judicial speed on which justice is served, and perhaps our current justice system could take a leaf out of the book, a page out of the book, rather, of NCT in terms of judicial speed and justice being served speedily. I think the fact that some 100% of the KPIs that have been achieved as well from NCTs must be applauded, as well as must be maintained. So well done and congratulations on the achievement of 100% in the KPIs, and hopefully there will not be any setbacks in the fourth quarter. But perhaps, Chair, my first question then to the NCT, and it doesn't matter who answers this, but the question, how do you balance the rights of the first question is, how do you balance the rights of the consumer with that of the debt holder? So there's obviously a very fine balancing act that one has to engage in. But what methods do you use to balance those rights? Secondly, do you view the increase in the case numbers from the time of the birth of the NCT to current date? Do you view the increase in case numbers as an indicator of financial stress of consumers that consumers are facing, or the efficiency of the NCT, or is it a combination of both? Then next question, Chairs, I think it's question number 3. What trends are emerging? What trends do you see to the NCT that are emerging, the types of cases that are being brought to the tribunal? And I think maybe this may also speak to the stress that many consumers are currently facing. And what are the types of cases, and what are the trends that you're seeing in that? And then, are there any cases? I think no, that question has been answered. So, have you had any data breaches? I think Honourable Chance may have touched on this, but have you had any data breaches, and how do you prevent them? Particularly as you seem to be relying more on AI in the finalizing of your DRAs and others. So that means that you obviously need to have a very effective firewall in terms of preventing your breaches into your ICT system. So would like to hear what kind of protection measures are in place. And then what steps has the tribunal taken also to increase consumer awareness of its services? I think that may have been answered, but I think more particularly, it's the ensuring the accessibility for your vulnerable consumers, both within the rural and urban or semi-urban, peri-urban areas, but particularly the vulnerable consumers, and they are found all over, not just in the rural, but also in the within your urban areas. How are you ensuring that there's accessibility to consumers? And then, Chair, to the TRP, notice that the ED, Executive Director position is vacant. Why is the position vacant? What is the process in filling the vacancy? And how has this vacancy impacted, if at all, the operation of the TRP? And then similar to the NCT, do you observe any trends in corporate restructuring activity? And if they are, what are those trends that you observe in corporate restructuring activity? And then finally, in your view, do our current regulatory frameworks and processes support or delay investment and market activity? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The next person.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, thank you. Let me read the DM in our midst and our honorable members and the entities present that has been presenting their reports to the committee. Chair, I think most of the questions that I noted to ask has already been asked by my learned member of parliament. Mine is just also to make an input, just to congratulate the work that has been done. A lot of work seems to have been done by the entities, and I think one need to appreciate and congratulate them for the hard work that they are doing. Sometimes you also need to appreciate the work that has been done, not only to fight with our officials, but for our entities, but also to say to them, thank you for good work being done. Chair, as the presentations indicated, there is a lot of work that has been done, that has been turning around the times of delivering of justice to our people. The only issue that I want to just make mention of is the issue of filling of the post. Just to say, because the presentation has already indicated that how are they going to fill the post. Just to indicate that it is very important that those posts are being filled so that we have the capacity of people that we need to do the work in the department. And then I just also want to indicate that the issue of the difference of payments between the courts and the tribunal. I think it is important that information must also be given to our deep rural areas where people doesn't have the information, because people will be going to courts for cases instead of using the tribunal, where they will be paying less than they will be paying at court. So it's important to take those information to those rural areas so that people know where they can be assisted if they need assistance. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Member Langa.
No, thank you very much, Chair, and greetings to DM and the team and the two leadership of the two entities. Chair, let me also welcome both presentations from both entities, Chair. But somehow, Chair, I feel somehow defeated because maybe one will have wanted to interrogate the presentations intensively. However, because of the presentations that were received at the 11th hour, Chair, it becomes difficult to interrogate when not properly prepared. And Chair, maybe let me register this concern, Chair. This is not the first time, we are faced with the situation whereby, Mondays are traveling days for most of us, and presentations were sent in the evening last night. And I think I arrived in Cape Town about 12 o'clock. Obviously, rest, and when you wake up to presentations, you know. So we do not want to not do justice to both to the entities and to the committee and the people of South Africa when we come to such meetings unprepared. And maybe, Chair, if the department in future could work on that. I'm not sure which part, you know, submitted the presentations late, but however, we received them late. So it's concerning, Chair. So other than that, Chair, I think maybe moving forward, we are likely to be faced with such a situation. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any further hands?
There's no further hands, Chair.
Okay. Just a moment for me as well, so that I can just look at my notes. I think we note the issue that is being raised on the timing. Let's just make sure that we can improve on that. I think this is one issue that is being raised, and secondly, just maybe to congratulate the entities, because I think a lot of great work is being reported, and there is general appreciation from the team. On the NCT, just two quick questions on the vacancies. And when are you likely to complete? And then secondly, when are you planning to complete the re-engineering project as the second area? And then with regards to the panel, some few questions that are there. I think the issue of the executive director has been asked. Maybe just to elaborate on it is maybe to just get a sense what has been the impact of that, and then secondly, then where there are delays in terms of investigation, maybe just to pick up what are the challenges with regard to that. And then on the other one is on it's just on rulings that do not meet the set time. If we can just talk to us about those issues. I'll now hand over to both entities, and then we'll take further engagements from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, Hazel, I'm back online, but would you like to start the answering, and we can come in as we need to?
Thank you, Chair. So the first question by Honourable Chance with regard to the chairperson's non-executive, why it was not a non-executive position and the governance perspective. So I'm just going to touch on that and give you some brief background. So initially, when the tribunal was established, the role of the chairperson of the tribunal was a part-time chairperson, and there was a CEO, which was myself. It then became, so the chairperson fulfilled a part-time role and was the accounting authority of the organization. It became very critical to ensure that this role could no longer be performed on a part-time basis, and there was a need for a full-time chairperson. That changed then, I think, from the time of the establishment of the organization, about 7 years into the establishment of the organization, the chairperson role became a permanent role, or rather, not a permanent role, a full-time chairperson role. With that came the following role. So the chairperson of the tribunal is appointed as the chairperson of the tribunal in terms of the National Credit Act and is responsible for the adjudication perspective. Then the chairperson is also the chief executive officer and fulfills those roles. And the third role that is fulfilled is that of accounting authority in terms of the PFMA. How we've tried to resolve the governance issues is that there's 3 governance committees that have been established, which is your ARC, your HR governance, and your ICT governance. These are all independent members that sit on these committees, and they then make recommendations to the executive chairperson or the chairperson of the tribunal. But that is realistically what the situation is. It does make it very difficult it almost becomes a one-man show, one-woman show, depending on who the executive chairperson is, because of the different roles and responsibilities. So I don't know, Chair, Mr. Bailey, whether you want to touch on anything further before I move on to the next question that was asked.
Yeah, I think that, and Member Chance, thank you for raising it, because it is statutorily a very powerful position. And certainly all I can say is that I'm aware of that, and that's why I take the Oversight Committee's roles very, very seriously, and one's got to act judiciously and cautiously to ensure good governance. I have nothing further to add on that.
Thank you. The next question was around the guidelines for the administrative fines. Honourable Chance, the guidelines are actually set out in Section 151 of the National Credit Act. And some of the factors which are considered by the tribunal members when administering a fine is the nature, duration, or gravity and extent of the contravention, the loss and damage that was suffered, the behavior of the respondent. They look at aggravating and mitigating circumstances, the level of profit that was derived, and the market circumstances. So there's quite a few factors that could get considered when an administrative fine is imposed. What is important to note is that the tribunal, through its judgments and through the administrative fines, looks at a balance. So yes, you want to ensure that the respondent gets penalized in the process for their prohibited conduct, but you also want to ensure that you make an order that gives back to the vulnerable consumers that have been exposed through this prohibited conduct. So, for example, if there's been overcharging of interest, there's normally an order for the refund of that. And we want to ensure as the tribunal that the consumers and that the respondents pay the consumers what is then due to them. And if credit agreements have been recklessly granted, the tribunal also has the power to deal with that and to declare them reckless credit agreements. When it comes to fines and refunds, you will also see that sometimes the tribunal orders a refund to a consumer. So it's always this balancing about, yes, you can impose administrative fines, and these are the criteria that you will look at in terms of Section 151, but the tribunal goes beyond that to actually see how does the consumer who has been affected through this process get adequate redress. Your next question dealt with credit users. Have they been sequestrated? So the process and whether the tribunal has the power to do that. So the process that gets followed is when we get a debt review application, the tribunal only has jurisdiction to deal with debt review applications where all the credit providers have agreed to and consented to the debt rearrangement agreement. So if there's any opposition or anything like that, the tribunal does not have the powers to deal with it. And then the next question is, okay, have we been approached with regard to cold calls sent by DCs? So this is dealt with by the National Credit Regulator. And if they find matters where there's been contraventions of the National Credit Act, those are the cases then that will come through to us. But the actual behavior, the actual conduct in dealing with this issue will get dealt with at the National Credit Regulator level, Honourable Chance. So I think you had other questions that the rest of the team can answer. You had ICT and there was a finance question on the pension fund. So I'll hand over to Dax for the ICT questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Hazel. Right, just to answer the questions through the chair to the Honourable Member Chance, you asked two questions, sir. The first was, why are we not using CETA? Through the chair, we have actually on multiple occasions since the inception, since I joined the tribunal in 2013, requested assistance from CETA, particularly in two areas. One was the assistance on the development of some of the case management system software on a number of occasions. And in the second area was to support us and assist us with infrastructure support. And sorry, there's actually a third area, which was also the to look at economies of scale of software licensing. For example, licensing with people like Vodacom in terms of our cellular capabilities and the like. And regrettably, on each of those occasions, I mean, we did it a number of times, the problem has been the turnaround times. First of all, the turnaround times in which they could provide us solutions around this. And secondly, the cost. In fact, we found that when we directly go out for software licensing, for example, Vodacom cellular rates, when we go directly to, when we just do a conventional request for quote, we were getting cheaper rates than CETA was quoting us. And then on the software development side, it was really a capacity problem. They didn't have the capacity. We develop in a number of different programming languages and database languages for our core systems. They didn't have the capacity in that regard. So in terms of effectiveness and speed of delivery and making sure that we can support the systems, we unfortunately couldn't get to an arrangement with CETA which would benefit us and deliver on the benefits in terms of turnaround times and support for the technologies. Then the second question you asked was around cybersecurity and what is our disaster recovery process in that regard. Through the chair, we perform a disaster recovery exercise twice a financial year, once in Q2 and once in Q4. And what we have is we have a remote site. We have an arrangement with a remote private company called Global Continuity. And that site is about 38 kilometers away from our main offices in Centurion. And they house a replica of our infrastructure, which can be brought online within a very short space of time to allow us to continue, to allow business continuity to happen, particularly in the critical areas of receiving cases, processing cases, issuing orders, etc., and judgments. And so we have that arrangement with them, and we test it out twice every financial year. And then there were, I'll just grab the question, and then over to Honorable Member Tring, who asked the question about our cybersecurity measures, which are, of course, as I've mentioned in the main presentation, are critical. But some of the specific interventions we do in that area, on a weekly basis, we do vulnerability scans on our infrastructure. Whatever the vulnerability scan reports provide us with, we do patching, software patching in that light. We have a twin firewall configuration based on FortiGates with sophisticated management software on there, which alerts us on a continuous basis to any attempted intrusions. And we interrogate and it has an alert system which allows us immediately to detect if there is an attempt which is critical, which we need to attend to. But yes, we've got a twin firewall. And the reason we've got twin firewalls is for redundancy. In other words, if one firewall fails, we dynamically fail over to the other. We also employ data encryption. As I mentioned in the presentation, we hold, as we know, highly confidential information of consumers, financial information, ID, books, and the like. So we have implemented data encryption using sophisticated Microsoft-based encryption tools to ensure that that data is protected. And then, of course, we do the cybersecurity audits using an external cybersecurity company who provide us with recommendations, a report with recommendations on an annual basis. And we ensure that as a matter of priority, we put into place measures to circumvent and address those recommendations that they provide for. Thank you very much, through the chair and honourable members. Thank you. I think those were all the questions I had.
Bax, there was one more question by Honourable Chance with regard to the disaster recovery plan, if you could explain it.
Yes, well, okay, I just been through the disaster recovery process, but in terms of the disaster recovery plan, we have a disaster recovery plan which basically outlines the processes of how we go about framing our disaster recovery exercises. And in there, it talks, it defines things like the recovery point objective and the recovery time objective, which essentially is the threshold that we can tolerate downtime for, and that we need to, or the time interval that we need to ensure that we have recovered from. It defines the different structures in terms of who the crisis management committee is, in terms of the members and the different committees that need to be in place and their particular roles in the event of a particular disaster. It also defines and identifies the type of processes in terms of the data and method of recovery of particular critical components like the server, like the critical data components, etc. So, and that document is sacrosanct. It also defines for each and every one of the different units, what are the critical elements? For example, the registry department. What are the critical elements of from a data point of view and from a resources point of view, must we target to recover so that, for example, the registry unit can operate efficiently again? And that goes for each of the units, the finance unit, the executive unit, the COO's unit, and so forth. So that recovery plan is an all-encompassing framework from which we derive our disaster recovery approach and methods in conjunction with the disaster recovery site, which I'd mentioned as well. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Muller, if you can address the issue of the pension fund.
Thank you. I'm going to respond to the question relating to whether the pension fund is fully funded. At NCT, the pension arrangement is not structured as a fully funded employer pension scheme. Employees will make monthly contributions to the pension fund, while the entity will make an annual employer contribution subject to affordability. The entity will continuously monitor the financial position to determine whether it's able to make such annual contributions. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Tring, you raised the issue about how do you balance the rights of consumers and the debt holders. I just want to give you, in terms of the legislation and what methods do we use. In terms of the National Credit Act, Section 142 sets out the manner in which a hearing will be held. And it gives the tribunal members the power to be inquisitorial. And it also says that the hearing needs to be as informal as possible. And that really allows the tribunal members, when they sit and adjudicate on a matter, when they have this imbalance with the two parties is to say to the consumer, who may be unrepresented, and maybe the consumer is facing legal senior counsel. And the approach that is followed is to say, tell us your story. Let us hear what has happened. And that's the way that the tribunal members can really start interrogating, getting more information. The tribunal members can also call for expert witnesses. And that's about ensuring that there's balancing of the rights of both parties before the tribunal. So I think Section 104 really assists the tribunal with that and ensuring that we are informal in terms of our proceedings. With regard to the other question that I'm going to just touch on is, I think I can go on then to my colleague Pranesen, who can talk around the case numbers. But I think before you go there, Pranesen, the question was, are we seeing more case numbers because of the financial situation of consumers or the efficiency of the tribunal, or both? And I think I can state that it is both. Mr. Moodley will take you through some of the trends that they're picking up in the market. But why I say it's both is because, the tribunal has had the approach where over the years, the tribunal has enforced a discipline of ensuring that the market has confidence in what the tribunal can deliver. And even during times when we had high volumes and our case management system was still being implemented, the tribunal took an approach where we went to the people. We went to wherever there were debt counsellors, regardless of the province or where they were situated or how small they were. We went to the debt counsellors and we had what was called motion courts. So the debt counsellors would bring their cases, we would consider the cases, and they would get the order on the same day. So the tribunal over the years has really built confidence in the market. It has built confidence in debt counsellors coming forward and wanting to file their cases with us as opposed to the courts. So in answering your question, it has been both. The confidence in the tribunal, our efficiency, as well as what is happening in the financial sector. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Moodley to answer the rest of the questions around the trends, etc. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Alwa Simpson. Thanks, Member Tring. In terms of the first question that was asked that Hazel did answer, I just wanted to add one more item, and that's in relation to the balancing of the rights. The tribunal rules has a set of forms which consumers can fill in, which enables them to initiate an application with the tribunal. Those forms are drafted in such a way or set up in such a way where their case can actually come out of those forms. So irrespective of whether they would know ordinarily how to bring a case or not, those forms provide a lot of direction in terms of what needs to be put forward to a tribunal member in the adjudication process. And I do agree that it is both in terms of the increase. The increase is a result of economic changes, but also as a result of the efficiencies, but also as a result of the stakeholder engagements. Because I think if we saw when we were referring to the stats, there was a big jump from about 40,000 to 50,000 and 28,000 to about 40,000 over the number of debt review applications filed at the tribunal. It was at that time that we started bringing in a very, very targeted stakeholder engagement approach. And it was that seemed to have coincided with the rest. So it is, I suppose, multiple factors that have come into it, which includes the stakeholder strategies as well as the economic environment that's facing consumers. In terms of trends emerging, one of the biggest trend that we've seen over the last year or two is the growth in the type of defective motor vehicle type cases that have come into the tribunal, especially in the second-hand market. It seems to be, or that is one of the biggest consumer protection type cases that come to the tribunal. And, there was a case which I didn't discuss earlier on. It was a case that was judgment was issued about a week and a half ago from the tribunal. And in that case, one of the things that was very interesting about the outcome is the innovative order that was released by the tribunal, and where arguments were requested what what had transpired was the vehicle was advertised on Auto Trader, and it says on the advert that it has a full service history and it's in excellent condition. And it turned out that none of that was true. So the company was actually almost interdicted from publishing that type of information, on their platforms if it is not proven to be correct. So it does help from an investigation perspective. In terms of what to look for. That was one of the more recent orders, but the motor vehicle industry has seen its fair share of administrative fines over the recent past, and I know we get quite a number of those types of cases coming in from the NCC as well. In addition, also we have we do have quite a few cases in relation to the debt counseling industry and becoming aware, or whether the consumers were aware that they would be placed under debt review. But it is not as wide-ranging as one thinks. It is limited to, it's a limited amount of debt counselors that have been brought to the tribunal. And I know we've deregistered over the last year and a half about 20 debt counselors for different types of prohibited conduct. Yeah, I think Ms. Alwa Simpson, one more question. Steps to increase consumer awareness. So the tribunal never really had a social media platform before. It's recently got one in this financial year. And we've seen quite tremendous growth on that social media platform, and we're looking to expand into different ones as well. Our engagement rate on that social media platform was sitting at between 12 and 19%, which is an incredibly strong engagement rate. However, we just started this process and we are looking at expanding. The Consumer Protection Forum that we've recently joined has given us access to which we had difficulty in accessing before. As mentioned, we were at Northwest last week. We're going to be at Limpopo this week. But the most important benefit from there is it gives us that engagement level, or that strategic partnerships with the different consumer protection agencies within each province, which can be utilized to access all parts of South Africa, which is part of our APP plan going into next year, where we are specifically looking at accessing different areas to make sure we can reach as many consumers as possible, leveraging the relationships that we would have been building through the introduction of the Consumer Protection Forum for us. Ms. Alwa Simpson, I think from Member Ching's questions, I've covered them.
Thank you. I want to just expand on the issue around the trends. We have found that there are limited cases or instances in terms of the legislation that consumers can come directly to us. We did in the previous financial year see an uptake with regard to the number of non-referral cases that we received. This means that the consumers have gone through the various ombudsmen, then to the regulators, and they were issued with a non-referral. What that means is that then the case ended at that point for them, and if they needed to take it further, they needed to come to the tribunal. And this is where we need to look at our issue about accessibility. We want to do more in this area so that consumers know, even if they get a notice of non-referral, they can approach the tribunal. And we have seen through the outcome of those cases that the tribunal has actually found in favor of many of those consumers. So that is an area we're going to be working on. It's another KPI we've added into our next financial year's APP to really ensure more accessibility of the vulnerable consumers understanding our role. So, honorable members, that issue of vulnerable consumers' accessibility is still very crucial to us that we are taking forward and building on. The question around from Honorable Messina around the vacancies, we have advertised the post of COO because I'm currently on contract, and a strategic oversight executive position. The chief governance officer position will be advertised also in the month of March. We are looking at filling those positions before the end of June. With regard to the job evaluation process, all the positions have been, we finalized all the profiles. We will get our report by the end of this week. We had extensive consultations across unions, non-union members, across all levels of staff within the organization as part of the change management process. We want to ensure that staff are fully on board with what this entails and what it means for them. So if we get the report by end of this week, we should finalize this project within the month, Honorable Masina. Thank you, and I hope that we've answered most of your questions. Mr. Bailey?
Yeah, thanks, Hazel. There's just one, I think we have, but the committee can let us know, but there's one thing that that we could perhaps just alert the committee to in terms of trends, and this is where I just want to turn to Pennison. If just some of the recent products that are being developed online and so on that fall outside of the legislation, and perhaps if you can just talk to the committee around some of these products and what that means for regulation, because it is quite important.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I think what Chair is referring to is the growth in the buy now, pay later sector and your early wage access products that have come into the market. On the buy now, pay later, what we found, or what we've identified, is that it can be accessed without any credit checks. So effectively, where it impacts us, or where we think we're really concerned about this, is from a perspective of our consumers that we've put under debt review, that we are hoping in time is able to exit debt review. And with these products in the market at the moment growing at the rate that they are growing, it's almost like a double-edged sword. So these consumers who shouldn't be accessing credit is now accessing this buy now, pay later scheme without any checks being done. It's limiting the ability for them to repay their debts, which is a concern. It limits their ability to pay their debts, and they could be found wanting in terms of non-compliance with the debt review order issued by the tribunal. And the same on the early wage access side. Anything that limits a consumer's availability or ability to repay debt would create a problem for the consumer to complete the debt review process. So that is two concerns that we know is in the market. The problem with it is it doesn't fall within the National Credit Act because it's not a credit agreement. So what happens is if there's a default, if there's a default in the payment of your buy now, pay later, then it falls as an incidental credit agreement and treated as such. So it is a bit of a challenge that we believe is overwhelming consumers at this time. Chair, I don't know if you wanted me to cover anything more on that.
I think you've just alerted the committee to that challenge. Thank you. We believe that that is our answer to the questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. With your permission, we'd like to respond. We note questions from Member Chance, Member Tring, as well as yourself, Chair, and Ms. Masakina, if I'm not mistaken, Member Masakina. We'll start with the responses to Member Chance, which my colleague, Ms. Mkwechana, will respond to, and then we'll move on to the other three members' questions, which are thematically similar. Thank you, Chair.
Just a response to Honourable Member Chance about the Competition Commission. The Competition Commission doesn't work with us with regards to operations with regulating effective transactions, but however, the Competition Commission does sit on the panel as an ex officio member, so they get involved in the governance level. Then with regards to the rulings that are in court and which rulings are currently at court, so I'd just like to clarify something. You spoke to, for example, the Mustek mandatory offer. So there was a time where the panel was not fully constituted. So what that means is that the panel then does not have the ad hoc TSC committee. When parties are then challenging the executive's decisions or rulings, they then cannot do this at a panel level. They jump straight to High Court. So the matter that you're talking about, the Mastek matter, was at a time where the panel was not fully constituted. They then appealed a decision that was taken by the deputy executive ruling. This ruling was then taken to court. And unfortunately, what happens at times when they review decisions and they review them at court, similar to an Ascendus decision that was also reviewed in the High Court because the panel was not fully constituted at the time, judges tend to then rule on the process rather than the merits of the transaction. Because as you can probably imagine, High Court judges are not necessarily familiar with this section of the Companies Act. So in the Mastek matter, as well as the Ascendus matter, where the rulings by the DD were taken to High Court because there was no TSC, the judges in these respective matters ruled on the process, and the judge in the Ascendus matter ruled that the matter should be taken back to the panel to opine on again. In the Ascendus, in the Mastek matter, the judge did not rule on the merits of the case as well. She ruled on the process. However, there is one ruling that is currently at court, the one that you spoke to, the Caxton matter, where the TSC did rule, and that decision is currently being appealed at court. And then you spoke to how often does the TSC sit, and is the TSC currently sitting and considering any matters? The TSC sits as and when parties appeal rulings by the executive. So we can't give an answer to say in a financial year, this is the number of decisions that have been appealed. It depends what is happening with transactions. So for example, I think in the financial year ended in 2024, there was a contentious matter which involved Northern Royal, Bafokeng and Impala, which was a mandatory offer that was being proposed by Impala for the shares of Royal Bafokeng, but then Northern was trying to make a play for the company as well. In that particular year, there were quite a number of TSCs, but that's because that was a hostile matter. So in cases where there is a hostile matter, you'll find that there will be a lot of TSCs, but you'll find in some financial years where there's no TSC at all. Currently, in the current financial year, there were two matters that were taken to the TSC. One matter has been withdrawn. However, we cannot speak to the matter per se because it's not it's not a matter of public record yet. We can, however, speak to the one that has not been withdrawn, and it involves Novus and Numis. Novus is the party that is proposing the mandatory offer for the Mastek shares. The deputy executive director has ruled that Novus and Numis are acting in concert, and that might affect the mandatory offer price that is being offered to the shareholders of Mastek. Numis and Novus are then appealing that decision in front of the Takeover Special Committee, and that is currently one matter that is sitting before the Takeover Special Committee. I'll now hand over to Zano.
Thank you, Chair. Just to note that the Caxton challenge is on constitutional grounds. So although it's a High Court challenge, but effectively it's not just a pure partial review. it's a challenge on the legislative text that gives the panel the power to gag certain parties prior to the commencement of the offer. So I thought that context is important just to contextualize why the matter is in the High Court. And it's still basically, by my recollection, there was still an interlocutory matter of the extent of the record relating to when those provisions were being drafted that's currently outstanding. Once that's finalized, we'll then be able to start understand better the substantive challenge, as well as then be in a position to put forward a defense should there be a need to do so. Then, as indicated earlier, there were some thematic questions, particularly around the vacancies or the vacancy at Deputy Executive Director level from members String, Musekina, as well as the chairperson of the committee. I think the main question was, why is the position vacant? The simple answer is, unlike other entities, from 2019, so for example, unlike the Consumer Tribunal, since 2019, the panel has appointed its executives on 5-year terms. In 2020, in 2019, the previous executive director's term commenced in January 2019 and expired in December 2023. However, when it expired, we were unable to secure the ministry's concurrence on the terms of reappointment. And this is a critical point. Legislatively, although the panel is responsible for the appointment, the terms of appointment must be in consultation with the minister, and the minister's approval of the terms of appointment or reappointment, as the case may be, must be in with the concurrence of the Ministry of Finance. This process then coincided with the changes in the administration, and by the time the new administration commenced its term, there had already been a 6-month lag between the expiry of the previous executive director's term and then the commencement or the vacancy had been in place essentially for 6 months, which then complicated the process of then getting the minister to then consider the request then on the terms, because we could no longer undertake a reappointment in the instance where the previous term had already lapsed and had been had since lapsed for over 6 months. What has happened since is that the minister has since consented to the terms. However, as the deputy minister has indicated, he is now awaiting concurrence from the Minister of Finance on the terms of appointment that have been consented to by the minister. And once that process is finalized, then the panel will be able to commence a process to recruit an appropriate executive director for the panel to then fill the position more permanently. On the question of the impact of this vacancy, it is obviously a significant impact. Typically, the panel operates on the basis of an executive comprising of the executive director and at least one deputy executive director. Since the vacancy occurred at the end of December 2024, there's only been one executive level personnel at the panel, which then creates risks from an operational level, because should something happen to myself, then effectively there's a risk that there's no executive. So we have communicated with this this issue with the ministry, and we are confident that risk is understood, and the ministry is doing everything within its power to finalize the concurrence process with the Ministry of Finance. So whilst we've been able to discharge the functions of the panel, so operationally nothing has not been done because of this vacancy. There is just that risk that's there should something happen to myself. So that's the only point to flag, which is that risk. However, operationally, we've been able to, between myself and my second in command from a technical perspective, Ms. Mkwechana, we've been able essentially to discharge the operational functions of the panel. And I think then that answers those thematic questions around the vacancy raised by the chairperson, Ms. Musikita, as well as member Thring. And then member Thring also queried on trends and corporate activity. So from our perspective, in terms of trends, they are fairly, because the markets we regulate is fairly developed, essentially takeover regulation in its current guise has been prevalent in South Africa since 1991, and the changes that occurred in 2011 were not significant enough to change the trends. Effectively, what we've seen is we typically deal with roughly 300 rulings on an annual basis, relating to between 20 and 50 transactions. And as I say, if you think about the market for corporate control in South Africa, being predominantly that relating to companies listed on exchanges, they are not significant volumes. The only issue is just complexity. So they, on an average year, we're dealing with between 20 and 50 transactions, and those transactions then may result in roughly 300 individual rulings on different questions relating to those transactions. And that trend has roughly been consistent. In terms of average transaction size, we're looking at an average transaction of roughly 2 billion rands, certainly over the previous 5 years. So as indicated, last year we dealt with just amongst the FDI type transactions, about 65 billion rands worth, not including those transactions where the takeover does not include a foreign acquirer, things like Curo and similar transactions. So those are typically the trends that we're looking at. Member Thring also inquired about whether our regulations have any effect on investment. My answer there is essentially we don't have, we can't say that they do. Our regulatory framework compares quite favorably with our international peers. On an annual basis, we do benchmarking exercises where we visit major jurisdictions, peer regulators in major jurisdictions to do a comparative analysis of what they do versus what we do. And we've consistently picked up that effectively there are similarities. And the reason for us undertaking those bilateral engagements or international conferences is essentially in line with the statutory mandates in section 196 sub 4, which essentially requires us to have regard to international trends or developments in the field of company law. So we do these exercises to ensure that the South African regulatory framework does not hinder investment in any manner. In fact, where we have picked up potential issues, we've been quick to flag these. Hence, there was an APP target last year, which was to propose amendments to the changes that had been introduced to our law by the 2024 amendments, particularly as it related to the application of takeover provisions to private companies. When we read the text of the legislation and picked up a potential issue, we then were quick to flag that and request that those amendments to section 1181C were not implemented until that issue was resolved, and the text has since been proposed through the Specialist Committee on Company Law, which is responsible for advising the ministry on amendments to the legislation. So that process is there. So from that perspective, there certainly are no other provisions which we've picked up that may potentially affect investment. As we indicated earlier during our presentation, our imperative is to ensure that transactions are never delayed or there are no bottlenecks because of takeover provisions. Obviously, if there are instances which justify delays, for example, where there are investigations or there are determinations which are then reviewed, we think that those delays are as a consequence of having to address those issues before the transactions can be fully implemented. Because obviously, if we do not do that, so if we do not investigate and issue rulings, for example, in matters like Novus and Caxton, then effectively the harm might be significantly more than the imperative for effectively a quick decision. So but even then, the actual decision is issued quickly if then the party chooses to exercise their rights to take it or to challenge it at a different forum. By all means, we do not try and delay that process. Then just to touch on the chair's last comment around rulings that do not, what are the causes for rulings that do not fit within the stipulated time frame? As I indicated earlier, Chairperson, because of how aggressive our timeframes are, there are instances where, notwithstanding the best the best will in the world, there might be complications either because of the fact that there's only one executive looking at all these matters, and our rulings require the executive director to sign off on. And in some instances where there might be more than one pressing matter, there might be a day or two delay, which then affects our ability to meet those timelines, or when the matter is genuinely complicated and we end up basically running over a little bit. I think unless there are other questions, I think we have addressed all the queries that were raised by the members. Thank you, Chairperson.
Is it back to me now?
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Are there further hands, colleagues, considering that we still have another business of the day? Because if there is none, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the leadership of the two entities, and which am well
Sorry,
on.
Chair. Can I just chip in quickly?
Yes,
we haven't
please
heard
do.
from the Deputy Minister yet.
DM, do you wanna?
I think there are some pertinent questions which came through, which I think should be aimed at the Deputy Minister, if I may be so bold.
Let me just check with him. DM, are you there? Is there anything that you wanted to add? The Deputy Minister? Member Chance, it seems as if he's not on the platform any longer. So if there are any specific questions, I think the team will help us to do a follow-up with the DM, and then we'll get it in writing in the next 5 days. With that, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the members from the two entities. Keep up the good work, and we'll continue monitoring your work as Parliament in terms of the oversight role that we play. Thank you very much. You are all released except members, because we still have business of committee to conclude urgently. Thank you very much. You are released.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
And they will indicate when we're ready to proceed.
Chair, we can proceed while other members are leaving the platform. Chair, we're just scheduling some minutes, and I'm going to ask Margot to share the first set of minutes, Chair, if that's in order. Chair, the first set of minutes is dated the 17th of February. We had a hybrid meeting, and we dealt with the film and television production incentive, and we also had representatives of the sector making the case before the committee, Chair. If you go down, Margot. Chair, we have the introductory remarks, Chair. Then point 2 will deal with the broader presentation as captured, as presented by both the industry and the ministry. The discussion is point 4, which captures the discussion there, Chair. If you go down. It was quite a substantive engagement. Meeting adjourned at 1:30 on that day, Chair. Thanks.
Okay. Let's just make sure who was present, if you can just go on top, just to make sure that members who are moving and seconding were at the meeting.
No problem, Chair. We can do that quickly.
Okay.
I think we had a full ANC, if I'm correct. Yeah, the full ANC, DA, Economic Freedom Fighters, IFP, and everybody was.
Can I get the mover and seconder for the minutes?
I move, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Chance. Move. Thank you.
I second, Chair.
Thank you very much. The next set of minutes.
Chair, next set of minutes is 25th of February. We had the NCC and the National Consumer Regulator. We dealt with the first, second, and third quarter
Sorry, Chair, there's
presentation.
just a correction needed here. The National Credit Regulator, not the National Consumer Regulator.
Yes, we'll correct that, Chair, because we just had it.
Thank you.
And Chair, we had full complement of the ANC as well as the TA. We had full complement of Nkonto Sizwe. I think we had a full complement of all members were present, Chair, as well as the alternative member, Mr. Three.
Okay.
As number 1 is always the introductory comments and the purpose of the meeting. Then we had the presentation from NAFCOC. We also engaged, I think DTIC also made the IDC.
Andre, I think we've got the wrong version there.
Okay, I also discovered that now, yes. Chair, apologies for that, Chair. I think we have,
Switch to the 27th.
yeah, I think that's the meeting that we have. Chair, we'll deal with that at a later stage. Chair, we had a meeting on the 27th with on the IDP report, Chair. We met with the relevant committees. If we go down, we have captured as far as possible the accuracy of members in attendance, Chair. Most of our members were present for that engagement, Chair. This is a meeting where we presented the report as well as the concluding remarks and possible recommendations proposed by different parties. We received from the DA as well as the ANC in time. The MK party submitted their inputs during the meeting, Chair. If we go down, Margo, and the committee concluded that secretaries will be allowed to incorporate those issues into the report, which subsequently happened, Chair. We adjourn at 12 on, Chair, until Thursday, the 5th of March.
Thank you very much. Mover and seconder. Noting that the meeting to finalize is still coming, pending, I think, by tomorrow or something to conclude the report. But that was just minutes for that day. Mover and seconder.
I move, Chair, for the adoption of the report.
Thank you very much, Member Musikadzi. Seconder.
I second, Chair.
Thank you very much. Let's move to the next set.
Chair, on the 3rd of March, we had engagement with the DTIC on its second and third quarter financial and non-financial performance report, Chair. We had a full complement of the ANC present. I think we had only Mr. Chance. If we go down, Margot. Mr. Mdluli was also present, as well as Mkonto Sizwe. Can we go down? Go down, Margot? Because it's just introductory remark, Chair. We are preparing it as prescribed by, as required, we are preparing a draft report, which hopefully should be completed by next week, Chair. And the meeting adjourned at 12:30 until Wednesday, the 4th, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can we get a mover and seconder?
I move, Chair.
Member Langa moves.
Gigaba seconds.
Thank you very
No,
much.
not Langa, Chair. I was not in that meeting.
It was Mr. Chance that
Mr. Chance, sorry, thank you for that. Mr. Chance moves, Honorable Dr. Kigaba moves. Thank you. Second, sorry. Thank you very much. The next set of minutes.
It's the 4th of March, Chair. It's with the CIPC and the Companies Tribunal, Chair. We had a full complement of the ANC present, Chair. If you go down. As well as the DA. I think we only had one apology there. I think it was from Mr. Langa on the day. That's correct. And point 2 captures the input of the CIPC and CT, and discussion is captured in 3, Chair. If we go down, Margot. We considered minutes as well, Chair. And the meeting adjourned until Friday, the 6th of March, Chair.
Hello.
And the meeting, yeah.
Yes, can you get a mover?
Chairperson, I move for the adoption of the report.
Thank you very much. Member Musikadzi move. Any seconder?
I second.
Dr. Kigaba,
Dr. Kigaba second. Thank you very much. Let's move to
those
the next.
are the minutes that we have for today, Chair. I will just verify the other set of minutes and we'll present it at the next meeting, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, colleagues. And then this concludes our work.
Sorry, Chair. Just one more thing, if I may. Sorry.
Yeah. Proceed, Member Chance.
In fact, 2 more things. Chair, yes. The committee was made aware last week that the investigative report by TSU International on the SABS has been completed. And in view of the fact that it was pressure from the committee that this report was commissioned by Minister Tau, and that the SABS are coming to the committee on the 25th of March, I would request that the chair writes to the minister and ask that this report be shared with the members well in advance of the meeting so that we have time to properly interrogate it, so that we can ask relevant questions in the meeting. That's the first point, Chair. And the second point is it's getting very close to when we are supposed to be going on our study tour to Japan, and I wanted to just get an update from the Secretary as to what are the preparations for that trip, please.
Yes, we will get the preparations after the meeting today. I'm going to be meeting with the chair of chairs on the sideline. Submissions have been made, and then I'm just awaiting to have that small conversation. Then probably at the conclusion of our meeting tomorrow, for a meeting, we will then conclude by just giving an update. I think the team will be ready then. With regard to the SABS proposal, I don't have a problem. Andre, if you can just write a letter to the minister, I think it's appropriate that they bring the report.
No
if they have,
problem.
yeah. So that's
We can
fine.
do that, Chair.
Is there any other thing?
No further hands, Chair.
No further hands. Thank you very much. This concludes our business for today. Are we meeting tomorrow? Is it virtual? So that
It's virtual. Our meeting tomorrow is virtual, Chair, and we'll also confirm we have two meetings scheduled for tomorrow, Chair. But we'll confirm when the second meeting will take place, Chair. But I'll brief you now at the end of this meeting, Chair.
No problem. Thank you very much, colleagues. The meeting is adjourned. I will remain, Andre, so that you can give me.
Please, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.